Good evening and welcome to the regularly scheduled Zoning Advisory Commission meeting, February 2nd, 2022. Just want to add, we have two commission members online participating, Brittany and Pat. Staff, can you confirm that we are in compliance with the Iowa Open Meeting Law?
We are.
Staff, could you please call roll?
Chris?
Here.
Waffleholtz?
Was that me?
Here.
Mulligan? Norton?
Here.
Russell?
Here.
Zaccaro?
Here.
Kemp is here, sorry. You broke up, I couldn't hear you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Commissioners, in front of you are the meeting minutes from our previous meeting that was held on January 5th. At this point, I'll entertain any modifications or a motion in a second for approval.
A motion to approve the minutes from January 5th, 2021.
All right, thank you. We have a motion and a second.
22.
Staff, could you please call the roll?
Chris?
Aye.
Kemp?
Abstain?
Leffelholtz?
Aye.
Norton?
Aye.
Russell?
Aye.
Zaccaro?
Aye.
I believe that was everybody. I'm sorry.
Mulligan absent. Yep.
All right, this evening we have 3 action items. The way the commission will handle the action items will be, we'll ask for the applicant to come forward, state their name and address, and specify what they're requesting. We'll take any questions for the applicant, the staff report. Then we will, if the commission has any questions for the staff, then we'll entertain a motion in a second, and then we'll call roll. So we'll go ahead and start with the first one. Again, these are all action items. We have site plan waiver. The applicant is Origin Design. The location of the property is 1185 Roosevelt Street Extension, asking to waive site design standards within Chapter 13 of the Unified Development Code, specifically pertaining to parking lot landscaping and parking lot layout requirements. Is the applicant or representative here and ready for their presentation? If you could please come forward.
Cody Austin from Origin Design, 137 Main Street.
Pat Reedy, Origin Design, also 137 Main Street.
Mike Igo with Clower Manufacturing Company. Yeah, I'll just, if I may, I'm Mike Igo, Vice President, part owner of Clower Manufacturing Company. Thank you for hearing us out tonight and appreciate your consideration of these 2 waiver requests. Just a little background on our company. We've been in Dubuque for 150 years in the downtown area for all of that time. Started off on Iowa Street, and then in the late 1890s, early 1900s, we expanded quite a bit. In the Millwork District, we had facilities on both sides of 9th Street, east of Washington Street. In the same time frame, we acquired the property on Washington Street between 27th and 26th Street. So, been in the Dubuque downtown area. A lot of our employees live downtown. But yeah, very, very thankful to be here tonight.
Sheena, I'm not sure how to, we have a very brief presentation that we'd like to make tonight. Appreciate your time this evening. We're going to be requesting 2 waivers from the site plan requirements, and I'll be detailing those briefly here. A little bit on the project background. So they're contemplating an expansion of the building, 67,197 square foot building expansion, which is greater than 25% of the current footprint of the building area. So with that, it prompts the site to be upgraded to be consistent with all of the features and requirements of the Unified Development Code. As you're aware, I'm sure, in order to grant a waiver from the design standards, we have to show proof that there will be an undue hardship because of a peculiar condition pertaining to the land in question. And tonight, our goal is going to be to explain to you why we think that that is the case. So the request number 1 is for a waiver from the landscape island requirement. So as you can see, depicted on the drawing, we've got in red the landscape islands that would be required in order to meet the requirements of the Unified Development Code. Wanted to note that we're just talking about we're asking for a waiver from the installation of the islands within the existing concrete. If you've seen their site, they take great pride in keeping it in very good condition, both the landscaping as well as the pavement. So from the standpoint of any need for maintenance or anything like that, it's certainly not the case. There is plentiful green space throughout the existing site. The loss of parking spaces will really, as a result of the construction of the islands, will then necessitate that we build onto the parking lot. And I'll show you that in a minute. So if a waiver isn't granted, the additional parking that'll be needed is going to be located in that triangular piece that is located or shown in yellow on this diagram. The result of that, because of the situation that exists with the triangular shaped piece, we have a driveway that has to connect from the existing parking lot to the proposed parking lot. And with that, we lose additional parking stalls. So overall, the addition of the islands and the need for that interconnecting driveway results in the loss of 14 stalls overall. So the green area of the islands that will be added as a result of this would be 2,545 square feet. However, the impervious area that's going to be added as a result of this is 6,734,
So the additional impervious area will be 6,734 square feet, which, when you look at it, it accounts for 2.6 times the amount of impervious area as a result of the added islands. So we're actually creating more impervious space than what we're gaining as a result of the green islands added. The second request that we're looking at is for the landscape buffer requirement. There's 2 locations where the site currently doesn't meet the landscape buffer requirement. The site, on this diagram, the site north is to the left. So at the northwest corner, there's an area where the existing parking lot gets within that 7 to 10 foot landscape buffer requirement. So it's highlighted in red there. So it kind of comes to a point right on the property line. The other area that we're not meeting that requirement is at the southeast corner, where it's highlighted in red, kind of at the top of the sheet, that we have the same thing happening at that point. So that location at the top of the sheet is a little bit special because it also contains some stormwater structures. There's an intake there and a storm pipe there that parking lot drains into. So if we were to try to adjust that parking lot, we would be also needing to add in 2 additional stormwater structures and some reconstruction of the parking lot to make it drain correctly. So a result of no waiver, I kind of already went over that. There'd be a loss of parking space at the northwest corner at the bottom of the screen. We'd lose an additional parking space along with the parking spaces for the landscape islands. And at the southeast corner at the top of the screen, we'd be losing a parking space in that location as well as that stormwater structure reconstruction. So to take a look at what's happening in the existing condition, this is a highlight of the area at the northwest corner that was on the kind of towards the bottom of the screen on the last slide. As you see, that parking lot just kind of points up into the area adjacent to the property line. And the adjacent property owners, as you can see, I don't think they're too concerned about a landscape buffer as they're currently going across the property line and utilizing some of that space. So then our proposed conditions, what we're looking at doing is utilizing the existing parking lot as it is, not having to saw cut and reconstruct the existing parking lot to create these landscape islands that would result in additional impervious area. And also just maintain those existing points in the areas that the landscape buffer to the property line, that setback there. These diagrams in front of you here kind of indicate the landscaping design that is shown for the overall site, and also highlights what would be required if the requirements were not waived and what it would look like if they were waived. So the client is still looking at doing the landscape buffer, landscaping in those areas. It's just that technically at those points, we don't meet the requirement setback. So to meet that requirement setback, we'd have to cut off some perfectly good pavement in those areas. One other thing I'd like to touch on is looking at the reasoning behind some of those landscape buffer requirements, I believe, is to try to shield the parking lots, the lights of the cars, things of that nature, kind of to screen the parking lots from the adjacent property. If we go back a couple slides here, at the southeast corner of the property, that area, as you can see along the top of the slide there, that area is along the levee flood wall. So screening from adjacent properties is already naturally happening from the levee flood wall. And then also taking a look at the northwest corner, where we're adjacent to the other industrial property, that's currently being utilized for storage of trailers, things of that nature. So the small area that wouldn't be technically screened at the corner, or meet the screening distance requirements, we don't see that as being an issue for the surrounding properties. So in conclusion, it's our belief that these requirements would create a waste in materials and a loss in parking space. The parking expansion would have to be design built, and it would increase the impervious area. Therefore, in our eyes, would not be a very sustainable way of proceeding forward. And the peculiar site conditions include the angle of the parking as it pertains to the property lines, because it is kind of an angle. It's not perpendicular, it's an existing condition. And the angle of the existing lots create those narrow points. And did you want?
Yeah, if I could just add a couple of things here. This expansion's been in the works for 5 years. The pandemic put the need for it in overdrive. We are out of room, we're struggling to keep up with our customers. We were looking out of state. We decided that the best thing for us to do would be to add on, stay in Dubuque. It is a horrible time to put up a building, but we have no choice. The cost is just, it's unbelievable how more expensive it is today versus 2 years ago. So we're struggling to keep costs down and make this work. And then I would add that any trees or shrubbery that would have gone on those islands, we'd be more than happy to put a whole bunch, elsewhere on the property. So it's, we want to do what makes sense. We just feel that it doesn't make sense to tear up a perfectly good parking lot and add more concrete to a site that's very functional. And we're landlocked where we are. It's not like we can kind of spread out and go. We just, so thank you.
Anything else to add?
I guess I'm just available for any questions that you might have.
I do have one, and I guess it was for Mike, I guess. Sorry, I should have asked this before you sat down, but the number of parking spaces are driven by, this is in the form of a question, I guess. Is it driven by the number of employees you have on the largest shift, or could you afford to lose any spaces?
That's correct. It's the max number of employees on the shift.
Okay, thanks.
Does anyone else in the commission have any questions?
I had one for Origin too. The drive aisle on the north end of the property, is that wider than 24 feet, or is there room to add spaces there?
I believe it's 24 feet. And to expand on your question about the number of spaces, we are looking at adding some to the parking lot there. If you'll see that there's a darker hatched area towards the top and left of the screen, that is a proposed parking lot expansion. And we are looking to, as Pat had indicated, we are going to meet all the requirements within that parking lot expansion. It's just in that existing parking lot that we're looking for the waiver.
And to follow up on that, the expansion of the number of spaces isn't driven by the ordinance, it's driven by how many spaces you guys would need?
The ordinance indicates that it's one employee per maximum shift, one per
Okay.
employee
So
per
it's-
maximum
It's
shift.
driven by the number of people working?
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Any further questions? All right, if not, you can be seated, thank you. And we'll ask the staff to please present the staff report.
Sure, Assistant Planner Travis Schrobelgen. So the applicant is requesting a waiver as part of an addition and parking lot enhancements to the existing development. The proposed addition represents an increase of more than 25% of the existing building footprint, which requires the entire property to be brought into compliance with the UDC standards. So they're actually asking to waive 3 sections of the UDC pertaining to landscape islands themselves being present, the portion of the landscape buffer noted in red there, and then the parking lot landscaping requirements, which means there should be landscaping on those islands. To my understanding, there are 4 existing islands, and they'd be on the south side and the right side of the picture here. Those are already existing islands. That's my recollection. Perhaps the commission can follow up with clarity on that or to clarify. So just to begin with the buffers, on the applicants are intending to still do a buffer, and they meet the 7 foot almost everywhere else around the property. I just asked for clarification maybe from the applicant as well. It sounds like they're still adding the buffer to where it's restricted on that north side or the left side. It'd just be less than 7 foot required. The other side. There, yeah. So there, I think, just Cody, maybe you can clarify, but you would still do landscaping there. It'd just be less than 7 foot. And then on the other side, there's some stormwater, some infrastructure there. And the removal of that or editing that or changing that may create an undue hardship in that location. Secondly, I would just go back to the islands, the landscape islands. Any island to meet current code would need to be landscaped. That's with shrubbery. It could be partially grass, but it would have to have some trees on it. It can't be strictly pavement. It can't be strictly turf. So the existing 4 on the south side or the right side of that picture there would need to be, cored out and turned into landscaping. The additional ones, the last section that's being waived is the presence of the end caps. So anytime you go over 11 spaces in a parking bay, and I believe there are 12 or 13 there, end caps are required. So those end caps should be landscaped as well. And yes, if you have any questions on that, I can clarify a little more. But the UDC specifically allows the Zoning Advisory Commission to grant a waiver from site design standards if literal enforcement is impractical or will exact an undue hardship because of peculiar conditions pertaining to the land in question, as Cody had mentioned. The commission may establish any conditions to ensure the general purpose and intent of the provisions of the chapter are followed. They may grant, deny, or approve portions of the site plan waiver request. And then please note that the affirmative vote of at least 4 commissioners is necessary to grant a waiver, and that the project is still subject to the development review team and will follow all other applicable city code. Planning staff recommends the zoning advisory commission review the attached information provided by Origin and standards outlined in the Unified Development Code to determine whether a waiver is appropriate. And that is all I have, unless you have questions.
Does anyone on the commission have questions for Travis? Did you have something that you wanted to answer for Cody or reply to?
Yeah, I believe Travis asked for clarification on the landscape buffer setbacks there on that northwest corner at the bottom of the screen. We would still be providing that buffer where feasible, it's just that it would be at a lesser dimension.
To explain that we would go beyond that 7 foot in other areas.
Yeah, we could go beyond that 7 foot in other areas. And I would like to also clarify Travis's other kind of question on the existing islands that are along there, highlighted in red along the driveway. There are existing concrete islands there. They're not typical islands that you would see in like Walmart or whatever, where there's a curb going around them. They're essentially a concrete cap on top of the concrete drive. So the construction, it's not like we can just take out the middle concrete area. Construction would require us to completely remove the area around those to install the islands. If that makes sense. It's kind of an odd situation, so.
They would be the same configuration.
It'd be a similar configuration, but it would be a complete removal and reconstruction.
All right, thank you. At this time, I'll entertain discussion with the commissioners. Does anyone, any comments? If no discussion, I would entertain a motion in a second.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the waiver for the site design standards within Chapter 13 of the Unified Development Code, specifically pertaining to the parking lot landscaping and parking lot layout requirements for 1185 Roosevelt Street Extension.
Thank you, Martha. Do I have a second?
This is Pat Norton. I'll second that.
And
All right,
I'm
thank
sorry,
you, Pat.
just for clarification's sake, are you articulating just the islands and the parking lot requirements, or are you also meaning to include the landscape buffer yards?
Whatever they were asking.
The
for,
three,
yeah.
so the full request. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that was clear in the motion.
Is that motion acceptable then?
Yeah, and,
Okay.
Yes.
and just to be
as-
clear on my
clar-
second,
Yeah,
I'm
thank you,
sorry,
Pat.
just to be
Yep.
clear-
Yep. Thank
just to be clear on my second, I want to make sure that, I was seconding the motion that we approve the changes for the areas in the existing, no waivers for the proposed.
Right.
Yes, that makes sense. That's what, yep. So landscaping
Right.
islands will still continue to be placed in the new areas, which they've agreed to, in the landscape buffer yards. Just the pre-existing condition parking lots wouldn't have the additional requirements provided by the code.
Yeah, I just wanted to check because one of the drawings showed a red area up in the proposed area. One of the landscape islands looked like it was highlighted red, and I just want to make sure that that would be a landscape island in the proposed area.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. So staff, could you please call the roll?
Zaccaro,
Aye.
Kemp,
Aye.
Russell,
Aye.
Norton,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Luffelholtz.
Aye.
All right, that motion passes. Moving on to the next action item, we have the applicant, again, being Origin Design. The location of the property is 651 Sipel Road. They're requesting to waive site design standards within Chapter 13 of the Unified Development Code, specifically pertaining to parking lot layout requirements. I know the applicant's here, so, and you're already at the podium, so if you want to go ahead with your name and address again, just for the record, please.
Cody Austin, Origin Design, 137 Main Street. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, Tri-State Quality Metals. A little bit of project background. Tri-State Quality Metals is out in the Dubuque Industrial Center South, just off of Sipel Road, just kind of right off the end of the Southwest Arterial. The project that they're constructing is a 31,000 square foot building addition towards the back of the lot. As is in the previous case, this building expansion is greater than 25% of the existing building size, so therefore it is subject to the requirements of the full UDC. A little bit of a project highlight here. The area in question that we're requesting a waiver is for a single intermediate landscape island on the north side of the building. The construction that they're proposing to construct the 31,000 square foot building addition and the associated pavement, site grading, utilities is all happening on the south side of the building. The specific request that we're asking for is for a waiver for the intermediate island within the existing parking lot. The existing parking lot consists of 25 spaces across the north side there. The Unified Development Code requires an intermediate island for any parking lot that has more than 20 spaces in a row. So therefore, we're requesting a waiver for approximately, the give of about 5 spaces, I guess is one way to think of it. The installation of this parking lot island would require them to saw cut and build the island into the existing pavement. This one's a little shorter than the previous one. So in conclusion, the construction of the intermediate island, we believe, would be a waste of materials and money. It would cause a loss of a parking space. The waiver request is to allow the 25 spaces within the existing parking lot to remain as they are. And a little bit of a blurb that I pulled off of the Zoning Advisory Commission's website is the commission members shall review the applications in terms of the impact to the neighborhood, the community, the environment, and the city's utilities and transportation system. It's our belief that allowing the parking lot to remain as it currently is would create no impact to the neighborhood, the community, environment, or its city utility or transportation system. So if you have any questions, I am here to answer them.
Okay, thank you, Cody. Does anyone on the commission have any questions for Cody? No? All right, you can be seated, Cody, thank you. Could staff please present the staff report?
Sheena Moon, Associate Planner. So I'll just give applicant did a great job of articulating the requirements in this case, so we'll just take a moment to briefly fill you in on the background. This project is currently in the site plan review through the city, so this is where we discovered this piece of the project. And as the applicant articulated, when there's an expansion of more than 25% of the existing structure, we do take a look at the site in its entirety. In this case, we did do a little bit of research and just want to make the commission aware that in 2014, there was an approved site plan for the project. And as you see in the image before you here, there was a landscaping island that was included in there. It was not completed during construction for whatever reason may have occurred. But nonetheless, the applicant is here today to request that that this be waived and that they don't have to go back and provide this landscape island. With that, staff really has nothing else to add other than we're available for any questions that you may have as well.
All right, thank you, Sheena. Does anyone on the commission have any questions for Sheena?
Just a comment that we should mention that we have those 2 photographs that Chad provided.
Yeah, thank you. I will bring those up as well. Yep. Some recent photos taken of the site from Sipel.
All right, at this time, I'll entertain discussion amongst the commission. If none, I will entertain a motion in a second.
Yeah, hello, this is Pat Norton here. I just wanted to kind of offer in my opinion at least. I guess I'm having issues with this one in that, there was an approved site plan in 2014 that just wasn't followed, and now they're asking to allow us to say, okay, you didn't have to do it back then. We're not going to make you do it now. I don't know. I'm having a little bit more of heartburn on this one than I was the previous one. That's for sure.
Does anyone else have any comments or?
I guess I wonder, do we know why it wasn't constructed the first time when it was supposed to be? No. Okay.
So there's never a follow-up?
Origin wasn't involved in the construction of the.
Okay.
Yeah.
If no further discussion, I would entertain a motion.
I move we approve the request for the waiver for the lack of an intermediate landscape island.
Thank you, Rich. Do I have a second?
This is Pat Norton. I'll second that.
Thank you, Pat. We have a motion and a second by the commission. Staff, could you please call the roll?
Chris,
Aye.
Norton,
No.
Russell,
Aye.
Carl,
No.
Kemp,
Aye.
and Luffelholtz.
Aye. That motion does pass with the 4 votes needed.
Yep.
Our final site plan waiver, we have the applicant as the RMR Group LLC. The location of the property is 2075 JFK Road, asking to waive site design standards within the Chapter 13 of the Unified Development Code specifically pertaining to parking lot landscaping requirements. Is the applicant or representative here? Ready for the, okay. If you would please come to the podium, state your name and address for the record. Okay.
All right, thank you. All right, hopefully this works. All right, good evening. First of all, thank you for the opportunity to present here in front of the committee tonight. For those of you I haven't met yet, my name is Alex Hofer. I'm an attorney here in Dubuque, Iowa at the O'Connor and Thomas Law Firm. I'm here tonight on behalf of the RMR Group concerning a proposed commercial real estate development at 2075 JFK Road. Also available via speakerphone, hopefully, is another project representative. His name is Matt Lingham. He is a civil engineer with Kimley Horn, and he's helped prepare the current site plan before the city at this time. Should any specific questions arise that I can't answer, I think he'll probably be our guy. But in short, in here tonight, the RMR Group is requesting a waiver of design standards of the EDC, which require a minimum 7-foot wide landscape buffer along sides of its proposed surface parking lot. For the reasons I'm here to discuss, before this committee tonight is a limited request for a minor waiver of the UDC, and we feel for good and reasonable reasons falling in line with the intent of the city's comprehensive site design criteria. So to help illustrate this, I'd like to display a few photos of the site as it currently exists and a visual of what our request before this committee entails. Could we go to the vicinity map first? I think it's page 2.
Yeah. Let me pull up. I'm so sorry, Alex. I'll
Oh,
pull
no,
that
fine.
document. Yep, I don't have the full document up.
And can you hear me all right, Matt?
Yep, yeah, I can hear you perfect.
Okay.
And You're referring to page 2 of the full drawing set, correct?
Yeah, just that vicinity map.
Yep, yep.
Gotcha.
And I have one in the packet here too that I think you're referencing too.
Perfect.
Perfect, thank you.
All right, so on the screen in front of everyone and included in your packet is just the vicinity map of the site. This is an aerial view. You can see 2075 JFK, which is located just west of JFK Road. The parcel itself is around 33,000 square feet, a little over 3/4 of an acre in size. It's zoned as a C3 general commercial. Previously, it was a Pizza Hut that has been closed for a number of years. To the east of the property, you can see a fairway. To the north and to the west, there are just some smaller office buildings, and to the south, we have a Quick Star convenience location. I think, can we go back to those two actual photos of the site as it exists now, excuse me? Perfect. So the photo on the screen right now shows the property as it currently exists. This is a view from JFK Road looking to the west. Just from first impression, you can see that the property is fairly long and narrow. You can get a sense of the height difference along the northern and the southern ends of the property. The boundary in the particular along the north and south are dominated by sizable retaining walls on site. The retaining wall in the north, for instance, is around 10 feet high. And along the south, the land slopes fairly quickly, but the retainer wall is on Quick Star's property, and that's also around that 10-foot height. From this photo, you can get a sense that vehicle access to the property is limited to the east side of the lot. There's no realistic way to incorporate other access and exit points to the property. And this is important because it limits what can be done as far as the building and parking lot layout is concerned. And I'll briefly get to that in a moment. But our plan for the site itself is twofold. One, we propose to demolish the existing Pizza Hut building. And the second is to erect a new Starbucks building and drive-through setup at the site. So currently, we have a site plan before the city's developmental review team. Under our current plan, in the center of the site would include just a centrally located Starbucks building of approximately 2,200 square feet. This site would cater to both in-store customers, but to a larger degree, the drive-through customers that we project. Outside of the building proper, there would exist 24 parking stalls, bicycle racks, an outdoor patio, an exterior trash closure, and a few other features itself. But let's take a look at the actual waiver request. It's on the back page of my packet.
Sure. Is this what you're referring to, Alex?
That nice map you prepared with the our three.
Oh, sorry, I was just there. Yep. There we go.
Perfect. So should be on the last page of your packet. You can see in yellow and red where the current site plan before the development review team fails to meet the 7-foot minimum landscape buffer requirement. This includes a small section along the north and then most of the southern section of the property along the boundary line. I just want to make a couple of main arguments to the committee tonight to stress a few points in support of this waiver request. The first is the natural contours of the property itself. So as you can see from the existing site photos, the contours of this parcel of land make it inherently difficult to incorporate the 7-foot wide landscape buffer along the north and the south sides of the parking lot. For instance, because of the sloped land on site, around 3,800 feet or 11% of the total property cannot be developed because of the retaining walls. We've been limited in what we can do to design to fit this site. I'd also note that the prior Pizza Hut was grandfathered in from the existing UDC requirements because of its age, which is why this issue has now just sprung up. Now, one of our primary concerns for this Starbucks development is to facilitate parking and vehicle flow through the lot itself. To meet the UDC specifications for the number of parking stalls, parking stall depth, cars backing up and entering spots, and the drive-through queue line itself, we need to take advantage of every foot of space that this parcel offers. So what is sacrificed in terms of this landscape buffer along the north and the south end makes possible greater ease of parking and vehicle flow that will ultimately help the property itself. Despite the limits of the parcel layout, we've been able to develop a site plan that we feel maximizes the green space and an aesthetic landscape feel for the location. Our current landscape plan dedicates over 20% of the property to green space. And you'll also see that there will be ample plants and trees there to promote a visually attractive landscape. Whereas UDC requirements call for 7 shrubs at a site of this location, our landscape plan currently offers around 55. And in addition, there will also be plans for around 5 trees on the site as well. With this in mind, we feel that we are doing everything that we can to foster a green space that promotes landscape and visual appeal, given sort of the contours of what we're dealing with here. And I'd also note that even though the north and the south portions of the property don't have that 7-foot landscaping buffer per se, the eastern side of the lot that abuts the public right-of-way is actually UDC compliant with at least that 10-foot landscape buffer off of the public right-of-way. So with this all in mind, just to briefly summarize, the development review team at this point is still reviewing the project, but at this time, this minor variance request is the only issue that has been flagged for a review that needs a variance. We feel that because of the natural contours of the parcel length, the need to facilitate parking and vehicle drive through the flow, a deviation from the 7-foot buffer landscape is essential to get this project completed. And despite this deviation, our landscape plan incorporates an abundance of green space and foliage on site to create both a visually and environmentally friendly layout. So for these reasons, we'd ask the committee to grant our request to avoid the strict compliance with this one provision of the UDC, and I'd be glad to answer any questions that you may have about this request at this time.
Thank you. Does anyone on the commission have any questions for the applicant?
I do have one. Regarding the south property line and the western part of the request, where there's 4 parallel parking spaces perpendicular in alignment with the drive-through there.
Okay.
Would it be possible, and this is more for your engineer, would it be possible to slide those 4 spaces further north to kind of line up with that landscape that sticks out into the drive area so that there's some more green space at the south property line?
I don't know if you could hear that, Matt. Would you have any thoughts or comments on it?
So he was asking about the parallel parking spaces on the south side of the property, the southwest side of the property.
That is correct.
I think the intention there, and I know we have some parking spaces on the southeast that are angled spaces towards the drive-through, is on parallel parking spaces, we typically want to put a minimum of, I'd say like 15 feet to have some separation between the vehicles that are queued in the drive-through lane and the vehicles trying to either enter or exit the parallel spaces. The angled spaces that conflict with the drive-through lane, the 3 westernmost in the southeast parking area, those ones we're designating as employee parking spaces. So we'll have ample space to back out. We could get a couple more feet of buffer, but I think the 18 was designed with the intent to provide sufficient space for those vehicles to access those spots.
Okay, thanks.
Any for?
Yeah, this is Pat Norton. I guess I've got a couple other questions on the site layout.
Yes.
What would happen if we would shift, I understand on the north side, we've got a major limestone retaining wall. On the south side, we've got a retaining wall on the Quick Star property and then a green space. What would happen if we shift some of these stalls along the south side to the north side and minimize where we're granting a waiver, i.e. flip the angled stalls over? I mean, it's going to be a little less convenient, but we're going to come a lot closer, in my opinion, to meeting the ordinance. So flipping the angled stalls from the southeast corner, more or less up to where the north line jogs. That doesn't look like a property line. It just looks like some other type of line, but right up in there, yeah, just extend that line down. Because I understand you're butting up against a wall, but when you're on the south side, you're overhanging, and depending on what we get down to for a buffer, we may be overhanging off this property.
I can provide some general comments unless you want to add some more specificity, Matt.
Oh, yeah, you can definitely go ahead.
Yeah, I just say, the property line there is a significant slope going down to the south over to the Quick Star location. I think the current site plan as it is has been designed to maximize what we can do in terms of parking. Where you can see on the current map on the screen above us, I mean, that space on the northeast quadrant of the parcel is fairly limited. I don't know how much more space there might be to incorporate an extra parking stall there. This might be something that we can.
I'm sorry, I didn't see that wall jog in.
Yeah, and that's no joke of a wall either. I mean, it's a 10-foot wall that cannot be moved within any.
Yeah, I'm fully familiar with the wall. All right.
Does anyone else have any questions for the applicant? If not, the applicant can be seated. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, and this time I'll ask for the staff report. Staff could go ahead, please.
Yep, Sheena Moon, Associate Planner. I will keep my comments fairly brief here, but as the applicant articulated, they are in the design review process, a site design review with our development review team at the city. We are still very much looking through, I think one of the big discussion points for this property has been the traffic flow and making sure we have adequate queuing space. And to that point, I believe the applicant team is doing their best to kind of maximize the usable space on the property to balance the need between green space as well as parking and traffic flow. With that, as the applicant also mentioned, they are actually exceeding the landscaping requirements as far as green space required, the 20% required, and are providing an abundant amount of landscaping throughout the property, as well as along JFK, the property line there. And as you can see in this image here, that retaining wall really does kind of limit a portion of the property that they could actually utilize for things such as parking and whatnot. So with that, this waiver is specific to that 7-foot side yard buffer landscape requirement. And with that, we are available to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Sheena. Does anyone have any questions for staff?
Yeah, I do. This is Pat Norton again. What can they get? If they can't get the 7 on each side, what can they get? I mean, I'm not, from what I'm hearing, they're asking for a 7-foot waiver on the north and a 7-foot waiver on the south. I mean, they're still going to need something there. I'm just trying to figure out what that is left.
Yeah, that would be a great question. I would look to the applicant and possibly their engineer to perhaps articulate. And I want to be clear that there's still there's many ongoing discussions still about the flow on the site and the queuing space that they're required and whatnot. And as the applicant articulated, the ingress and egress locations for this property are pretty much set. So they're really trying to work around that. But if there's any ability, Alex, to mention or to clarify what you could require, I mean, maybe even what's being actually called out here in this plan, if it's a foot or 6 inches or 3 feet or whatnot, that would be helpful.
Yeah, and I'm trying to see from my plan what it currently shows as far as feet. I mean, this wouldn't be the full 7-foot buffer request. This would probably just be a small token of a few feet.
And while you're looking that up, I will just mention that, as we look at this, my screen froze here, but along that northern property line, that existing retaining wall is really what you're seeing in the image here, that striped piece coming through. So that's what that's articulating there, is that retaining wall does abut pretty much to the property line. So I'm not sure if there's anything really between the parking spaces and that wall. That would be a question. And then on the southern side, I'll let you speak to that as well.
No, correct. I mean, there might be a way to, edit or detail the plan to provide just a little bit more landscape space than what it is. It's just under the current proposal, because of that retaining wall, we can't make the 7 feet. I think at this point, the request is just for a couple feet deviation from that spot, but I don't have that exact footage in front of me right now, but I'd be glad to address that after the meeting via an email to anyone who's interested.
Pat, they do, Pat, looks like they have some sort of concrete bumps.
Curbing and stoppers.
Yeah, there's a curb, I think, so.
That's great, but cars still can overhang a couple feet past that. You know what I'm saying? And I want to make sure we have at least that, plus then a little room. I just don't want to give them, an extra 14 feet they can deal with on this whole site, because I don't think that's right. I think we need to know exactly what we're granting here.
Yeah, it looks to me like 7 and 7.
Is what they're asking for,
Yes.
to be waived.
And-
Right.
And I think that's what the
And
site,
I'm not willing to go down to 0 and 0. But that's my opinion, so. I mean, if nothing else, your car is gonna hang over that curb. You pull in until your wheel hits it, your bumper is gonna hang over. We need to at least count for that roughly 2 feet. Otherwise, they will be encroaching on the neighbor's property.
Do you have anything to add to that, or?
No, unless, do you have any specifics, Matt, that we can?
I mean, that's just my opinion.
Is there any way along the south property line, do we have any specifications as to, how much leeway we have in terms of that 7-foot landscape buffer?
So for the angled spaces, we wouldn't have any leeway due to their proximity to the easternmost one, or the westernmost spaces to the drive-through lane. With the parallel spaces, I would say we might have 3 feet we could play with to push those a little further north. That would give us 3 feet from the property line.
yeah, that's what I asked about
But
that
other-
before.
On the parallel stalls, you don't overhang the curb. You do on the angled stalls. Those are the ones I'm most concerned about. We need to have a buffer there, in my opinion, of at least.
So the angled stall, yep.
I think you got cut out.
Does that
there.
make sense?
Yeah, I think we're tracking here.
Okay.
So is the concern those 6 angled stalls in the southeast?
Yes.
So we have the proposed wheel stops, which are there to prevent, obviously, there's a pretty steep drop there. So the wheel stops obviously are there too. A car can overhang over them typically around 2 feet once the front wheels hit that wheel stop to prevent cars hanging over the curb.
So you're gonna have wheel stops in front of the curb?
Yes.
Yes.
I see them there.
Your snowplow drivers are gonna hate that, but that's fine. I'm not a snowplow driver.
So at this point, we kind of skipped over the whole entertain discussion, so I think we're kind of doing that in the mist here. So yeah, we can continue discussion, or if someone wants to make a motion to approve.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we approve the request, but with the 4 parallel spots, we changed the number to 4 feet instead of 7.
What will we change it to on the angled stalls?
Keep it the way they requested it.
At 0?
Yeah. That's the way my motion is anyway.
Okay.
coming, Rich?
Oh, okay, thank you.
And does anyone, can I get a second on Rich's
Could
motion?
I apologize for interrupting. Can I get some clarification? That would be a 3-foot landscape buffer yard along the parallel spots. When we say 7 to 4, we're saying we're going to allow a 3-foot landscape buffer, not a 4-foot landscape buffer yard, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So can we have the motion presented by Pat? By Rich. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
This is Brittany. I'll second.
All right, thank you. So we have a motion and a second by the commission. Staff, can you please call the roll?
Zakaro,
Aye.
Aye.
Christ,
Aye.
Norton,
No.
Russell,
Yes.
and Leffelholtz.
No.
All right, so that motion does pass with the 4 required votes needed. So thank you for your presentation. All right, that completes our action items for tonight. Any items from the public? Hearing none. Any items from the commission? Hearing none. Any items from the staff?
We have nothing.
All right, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
I make a motion, we adjourn?
Thank you, Martha. Do I have a second?
Second?
Second by Terry. Staff, could you please call the roll?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.